a show that encourages you to get out and do your own rambling. Get out there and explore the many places to go, things to do, events to attend, all through our area. Today we're in a very special home. This is the Sutherlin Mansion in Danville, Virginia. It's a very important building historically. And here to tell us about it is C.B. Maddox, the Visitor Services Coordinator for the Danville Museum of Fine Arts and History. And welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to come and do the show here.
I'm glad that you did.
Yeah, me too. I love this place. My wife and I have been here before, and this is just a very incredible place. All right, the Sutherlin Mansion. Let's begin by why would people come here in the first place?
Well, this is our history and art museum for the city of Danville. We are actually three museums in one. We're a historic house, we're a history museum, and we're also an art museum. All in this very one building, the main building. We do have three buildings in our campus. The main building, which most visitors, it's the only building that they will see. We do also have an additional building that's our studio space, and a third building that's our research center. But we are standing right now in the study of the main building, part of the original 1859 house. This room could also be referred to as the family parlor or the gentleman's parlor.
So now the Sutherlin Mansion, the visitors are going to need to know who Sutherlin was.
Right. Well, William T. Sutherlin, and here's his portrait. And this particular portrait is painted by William Gall Brown Jr., as are four other portraits that we have in our collection to be viewed. But William Sutherlin initially was a tobacconist here in Danville. In fact, he was most proud of saying that he was a tobacco farmer. But he was into very much every other business that was current at that time in the late 19th century. He had originally purchased this property in 1855, started construction on the house soon after that, and the family did occupy the house by 1859. But its real claim to fame was what happened at the end of the Civil War.
And this is the reason why we've come here, because it ended up being a very important building.
Correct, because when the Confederate government left Richmond, they traveled to Danville. This was something that they had planned because, of course, the siege of Richmond took quite a few months. So they traveled here to Danville to establish the Confederate government in Danville. So we like to think of Danville as a city being the last capital city of the Confederacy.
The last capital city of the Confederacy. Now, isn't that cool? Right here, Danville, Virginia. And that makes this building then what?
The last White House or executive mansion of the Confederacy, because this is where Jefferson Davis stayed while he was here in Danville. And they were here for exactly 1 week's time, from April the 3rd until April the 10th of 1865.
So, not expected to be quite that short, but President Jefferson Davis actually lived right in this building. It's pretty cool.
Yes, it certainly is.
All right, so now let's go. People want to come and see the last
White House of the
last White House of the Confederacy, and when they come in, they're going to use the south entrance. And what are they going to experience coming in here?
Well, we have a short introductory film that will give you some background information not only on the Sutherlins, but also on the Civil War years. Then after that, we have an audio tour with headsets that will take you through the historic house part of the museum. Those two items would total to about 45 minutes if you don't pause on your audio tour, which of course we invite you to do, and look through the items in our historic rooms.
See, this is what I like about these lesser known historic buildings, and we hope to make it more known by doing the show. But you don't have the throngs of people, so you have time. Be curious, find out more about the building as you go along. You're not being pushed through by throngs of people.
Now, of course, we can arrange for group tours that are docent-led with 8 or more people, and that would be a minimum charge of $40.
So if you've got more than 8 or more people, you can have a special tour. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay.
And then after you finish touring the historic house part of the museum, we have our Civil War exhibit with quite a few artifacts that's on 2 levels of the west side of our building. From there, we invite our visitors to go into our Hall of Fame, which is comprised of little autobiographical sketches of people that have been born and raised here in the Danville area. Do hope to expand our history beyond the Civil War. As well, but that is our main focus right here at the moment.
Well, of course, this building has
absolutely
very significant for the Civil War.
Yes.
Okay, and then it's a beautiful grounds. The picket fence around the outside. It's a beautiful place. You're going to want to walk around. It's like a park.
Right.
So make sure that you take time to walk around and see that as well.
The property is owned by the city of Danville to this day, and the museum is a separate nonprofit organization that leases the building from the city, and the city maintains the grounds on the building. And also the fence that you just mentioned was a gift to the city from the Garden Club of Virginia. If you've ever been on the Historic Garden Week in April, the proceeds from that do go to restoration projects. And about 15 years ago, the Garden Club of Virginia decided that they would rebuild the fence that's based on a 1900s view of the house.
And it is very prominent. It's a very beautiful fence. It's the first thing you'll notice as you drive up. So you can see the building, you can see the grounds, you can see the other buildings, but there's no tours of those.
Now, well, there are classes that we do have in our studio building from time to time. Currently, our research center is not open to the public. We do in the future hope to have that available for researchers to come and either use our library or go into some of our other archives.
Okay, when you say research, you're talking about historical research?
Absolutely, yes.
Genealogy, that type of thing?
We have been talking with the genealogy department about the possibility of expanding our genealogy collection, but the genealogy department the genealogy library is currently located in the Danville Public Library, and from what my understanding is, they have an excellent staff there.
Cool. Well, that's neat. There's a lot of things to do here. We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the significance, a little more about the significance and the history of the building. And so stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm in the souvenir shop here at the Danville Museum of Fine Arts and History, and as we've talked about on their shows, souvenirs are an important part of travel. This again, as we've seen, is not just a souvenir store. This is a fine arts store, has some great wall art, some wonderful pottery, some beautiful things here, as well as things that would be good souvenirs for your trip to Danville and the visit and your visit to the mansion. So I hope that you'll take advantage of it. Come in, take a look. Wherever you're happening to ramble, you need to check out the souvenir shop. The gift store is a very important place to be. Welcome back. I'm still with C.B. Maddox, and we're glad that you came back to see the second segment of the show. Now we're going to move into a little more of the history and the significance of the structure. And of course, we first need to learn more about Mr. Sutherlin, how he got here. Now, you said he started as a tobacco farmer.
Correct. He was born east of Danville in 1822 on his father's tobacco farm. And Sutherlin did enter into the tobacco trade when he was a young man. In fact, his first foray into selling processed tobacco netted him over $500.
That's a lot of money back then. Now, that would have been about what year?
That would have probably been in the late 1840s.
Okay. Okay, we're 1840. We're getting closer to the Civil War.
Right, absolutely. And in 1855, when his father died and Sutherlin came into some of his inheritance, he constructed his tobacco warehouse, which is still standing on the corner of Lynn and Loyal Street. And he also
Here in Danville.
Also bought the property on which this house sits.
And that was 1855.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So 1855, he now owns this piece of property and begins to work on building this mansion.
Correct. It was designed by an architect. I believe Klopman was his last name, out of Richmond. The house is built in the Italian 8 villa style, which was very popular at that time. And when it was finished and occupied by the Sutherlands, we believe in 1859, that it was the finest house in Danville.
And when you come to see this place, you're going to agree, it is a beautiful place. Aside from the historical significance, it's a very, very beautiful building, and they've done a wonderful job of restoring it. You're really going to enjoy coming down here.
Yep. So Sutherlin was most proud of saying that he was a tobacco farmer, but he was so much more. He was into banking, into railroads. He owned a part interest in the Danville-Richmond rail line, which was in existence during the Civil War. In fact, it was one of the major supply lines to Richmond. And at that time, Sutherlin was quartermaster for the post of Danville.
Okay.
He had several health conditions that precluded him from going off to fight in the Civil War. So he took the position of quartermaster here in Danville.
And you were saying that one of the health conditions that he had was chronic bronchitis, and they think that was because he smoked so many cigars.
Exactly.
Being a tobacco farmer, and we have and you have.
Yes, right here in this vitrine, we have Sutherlin's tobacco humidor and his cigar holder. Also there in the foreground, we have a piece of the Sutherlin's crystal. So
Sutherlin is in the military. He's the quartermaster during the early part of the Civil War.
Correct. He was quartermaster here until April the 1st of 1865 was when he resigned his position.
Oh, okay. Now, he also was a delegate to the Convention for Secession.
Correct.
And that begins to build the story of how this ended up being the last White House of the Confederacy.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about how that convention came about and his role.
Right. Well, of course, the initial secession of South Carolina occurred much earlier, but in April of 1861, there was a convention that was held in Richmond to vote on secession. On the first vote, Sutherlin, as did most of the other delegates, voted not to secede from the Union. However, after Lincoln had called for the 75,000 troops and the firing at Fort Sumter, another convention was held, at which time they did vote to secede from the Union.
So Lincoln's actions at Fort Sumter convinced the people that were on the convention that it was time, it's just time to go.
Yes.
Okay.
Certainly.
All right. So that was when?
That was
1861.
April the 14th of 1861.
Okay.
Was when they voted to secede from the Union. Interestingly enough, another one of the delegates from the James River area was John Tyler, former President of the United States.
Wow.
He also voted to secede from the Union.
Things changed a lot in 1861. Okay, let's move forward into now. The war is going on. The Confederate capital is Richmond, Virginia.
Is under siege from Grant's army.
Okay.
And that lasts for a considerable time, during which time the Confederate government actually makes plans to move the capital to Danville.
So this was already in play.
This was already a planned action, primarily because Danville was, at that time, one of the largest cities on the eastern coast. In fact, some experts say that it was the largest city between Richmond and Atlanta that was still in Confederate hands.
So Richmond is the Confederate capital. Plans are already going underway to move it over here. The plan was
correct.
About when had they hoped to move over here?
Well, it was all dependent on how long they could hold Richmond.
Okay,
so,
that time frame though?
Absolutely, in April of 1865.
Okay, all right. So and then Richmond fell.
Correct. On April the 2nd, they evacuated Richmond
and came directly to here.
Right.
So that's how the Confederacy, the Confederate capital, ended up in Danville because of the fall of Richmond.
Correct.
Yes. And then this became the White House, the executive mansion for President Jefferson Davis.
Correct. And in fact, he had the last cabinet meeting was held here before they found, the last cabinet meeting was held here before they were informed that Lee had surrendered in Appomattox.
Okay, and of course the surrender of Lee changed everything.
Absolutely. Well, it was the beginning of the end. There were actually 5 or 6 surrenders. In fact, the last surrender didn't occur until November of 1865.
Really?
And that was a ship that had been in the Pacific Ocean when they learned of Lee's surrender, and the sailors actually traveled all the way to England to surrender there because they felt as if they would not be put to death if they surrendered in England.
I see. So it didn't happen all at once.
No.
Of course, they didn't have instant communication by satellite, so not everybody found out at the same time.
Couldn't put it on Twitter.
Thank goodness. But so the fall of the Confederacy at the end basically ended the capital here.
Yes. Well, by the time they left Danville, the Confederate government was pretty much ended.
Sure.
They were just trying to figure out where to go next, attempting, I believe, to get to Texas and then into Mexico. However, Jefferson Davis was captured on May the 10th in Georgia.
Okay, so this was the capital for exactly 1 week.
Correct.
From April 3rd till April 10th of 1865. And then they're trying to escape and get to Mexico and were captured.
Right.
So that's the story of how this mansion fit into the very last portions of the Civil War. Incredibly interesting stuff, and of course there's all kinds of things here that will help you learn that story more for yourself. We're going to have to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about why you would want to keep coming here. Of course, you're going to want to bring your friends here every time they come visit, but the things that they do on a regular basis to make this an ever more educational experience. So we'll be right back. We're back for the third segment of the show. We're going to concentrate on the rotating exhibits that you have in the museum, the special events. If you have a special group out there, how do they contact to set up special tours? Those types of things. So go ahead. Get started.
Regular hours of business. The museum is open Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. and then on Sundays from 2 until 5 p.m. And like we mentioned earlier, groups of 8 or more can make arrangements for a docent-led tour by appointment. Please don't just come in with a group. That might be a little bit difficult.
Sure.
But,
and you can make those contacts if you go to my website, rockysramblings.com. I'll have the websites and phone numbers and things like that down below the video so that people can find how to call and make those arrangements.
Right. We are in the dining room right now. This is where the Sutherlands had their dining room. This room was used by Jefferson Davis. In fact, the last cabinet meeting before he learned of Lee's surrender in Appomattox was held in this very room.
So this is a very important room, very last cabinet meeting of the capital of the Confederacy before they found about the final surrender.
Right. And the china we have in here was owned by the Sutherlands, so this is the very china that Jefferson Davis would most likely have eaten off of. The crystal we have set on the table here belonged to the Sutherland's granddaughter, who they raised here in the house. And she was in fact married here in the house, and these would have been wedding presents that she received 122 years ago, and we've just had these returned by a descendant of hers who currently lives in California.
You gotta love this stuff. I mean, the actual china that was used by Jefferson Davis when they lived here. Just you just can't beat that.
And you never know when we're going to be getting something like that back again.
Sure.
Now we do switch out this table for the holidays, as well as we also set it up to look like it might have right after one of those cabinet meetings. Because of course he held several cabinet meetings here during the week that he was in residence.
Okay. I bet Christmas is really beautiful here.
Oh, absolutely. We have quite a few volunteers come in to help decorate the house for Christmas. We will decorate it just right around Thanksgiving. We haven't set the day. I like to be a little bit of a traditionalist and wait until the day after Thanksgiving.
I'm with you on that. I like it.
Of course, during Victorian times, they would wait until just a day or two before Christmas to do any decorations. Sure. They were much more conservative with the decorations.
Well, but they're not trying to make money in all the stores like they are now.
No, absolutely not. Another event that we will actually be having this year will be our every other year morning exhibit to commemorate Major Sutherland's death in July 23rd of 1893. We will put the house into mourning that Monday, the 24th of July this year, and the house will remain in mourning for 1 month's time, which was traditional at that time.
So when you put a building in mourning, how do you signify that?
Well, the most visible aspect will be the draping with black crepe.
Okay.
We will actually drape the black crepe around the front doors of the house, so people will know from the street that this house has been put into mourning. Inside, we will cover all of the mirrors. That was a superstition that if you saw your reflection in the mirror, you were going to be the next person to die. But from a practical standpoint, who wants to see themselves in a mirror if you've been crying over the loss of a loved one?
Well, that makes sense.
Also, we'll pull the shutters on the house, so the house will be actually very gloomy looking for that month's time.
Sure. In mourning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, now, outreach. Do you do outreach programs to the schools and whatnot?
Yes,
like that?
we have quite a few different programs. We do some in-house. One of our most successful ones has been Art Smart. Probably every winter we have the Art Smart program here for between 600 and 800 children. And that particular program is designed for preschool up to 3rd graders.
Okay.
But we do have several educators that will go out to the schools, and we have innumerable programs that they can do not only on the Civil War history, but also history of Virginia and this region throughout the years.
Okay.
We also have rotating exhibits. Because we are 3 museums in one. We're a historic house museum, we're a history museum, and we're also an art museum. So currently we have an art exhibit by a family of artists, Phil Ramsey and his 2 sons, Wyatt and Kurt. That show will be up through the end of July. Our next show, which will be opening on August the 11th of 2017 is going to be a collaborative show with the part of the collection from the National Tobacco and Textile Museum, which unfortunately is no longer open to the public, but their collection is still extant, and they will be sharing portions of that collection with us.
And that's the beauty of these museums with the rotating exhibits. That way you can come in and learn new things all the time. So don't be afraid to get on the website and look around and see what's coming along. And
another exhibit that I'd like to mention is this October we will be having the annual Danville Art League Juried Art Show. So check out our website for when the take-in for that show will be. Traditionally it is the middle of October, and people can enter up to 3 works of art for a nominal fee.
Cool. All right. All right, that's what we have going on here at the Sutherlin Mansion, the last White House of the Confederacy. CB, I really appreciate your taking the time to take me through and show our visitors what there is to see here. As always, two-dimensional TV screen in a half an hour cannot tell you everything that you can experience while you're here. So you're going to have to ramble on out and see it for yourself. And when you do, I encourage you to be driving a safe, well-maintained vehicle. We want to make sure that you get there and back safely wherever you're going. And here's your defensive driving tip for the week. Making proper turns. When you're coming to an intersection and you're going to make a turn, make sure that you're doing so properly. Make good square turns from the lane that you're in, from the proper lane, into the proper lane. Move into the lane that is the closest available lane. Instead of sort of oozing over the entire road, take from the lane you're in, good square turn into the lane that you're supposed to go into, and make sure you use your turn signal first so that you let the other drivers know your intentions. It's very important. So there you are. Until my next episode, here's wishing you safe rambling.